curiouser and curiouser. American McGee's Alice had all but shaken off the memories of her past as she left the twisted asylum behind her and tried to start a new life. No such luck, Ms. Little. Come with us as we take a trip down the rabbit hole and enter the Wonderland once more for an Alice Madness Returns review. Following immediately on from the previous game, Alice has left Rutledge Asylum, where she was placed after the deaths of her parents and sister. She now lives in an orphanage in Victorian London under the care of a psychiatrist named Dr. Angus Bumby, but is still traumatized with memories of her parents' death. Whilst on her way to the chemist's, Alice suddenly has a vision of herself in Wonderland, and the Cheshire Cat appears to tell her a new law reigns in Wonderland. So, taking Vorpal Blade in hand, here goes Snickersnack, don't you know? Alice re-enters the whimsical land that once was her refuge, but is now overrun with the stuff of nightmares. Can she save her mind and the place her imagination built? Let's find out. Alice is a meek girl in the real world, but when she enters Wonderland, she imagines herself as a fierce, beautiful warrior with a killer blade and a killer dress sense. Suffering from a hero complex, she helps the other inhabitants of the world as she was unable to help herself and is aided in her quest by the Cheshire Cat, a scary-looking feline who likes to pop up here, there and everywhere, talking in riddles. The two are joined by a larger-than-life cast of characters that fans of the original Lewis Carroll works will undoubtedly recognise. The most striking and memorable character of Alice Madness Returns, however, is not Alice, but Wonderland itself. This is the fantasy land that she poured so much of herself into, and similarly, what the game's designers have obviously spent most of their time constructing. Vast and beautiful backdrops, inspired by surreal artists such as Dali, Bacon, Bosch and Hokusai, mean that you'll spend as much of your time admiring the scenery as you will carving up the creatures that live in it. Our favourite levels include the two-dimensional Japanese gardens and the ice-covered, moonlit Arctic. Sadly, the graphics of Alice Madness Returns don't quite live up to the world the action takes place in. As beautiful as Wonderland is, textures pop in and out, bringing you harshly out of the moment. Irritatingly, Alice frequently gets stuck on the scenery and loading times are long, and all made all the more apparent by cropping up in the strangest of places. Cutscenes are disjointed and feel awkwardly placed, which is unfortunate as the two-dimensional animations that flash back to Alice's past are great-looking and eerily fit the dark story they divulge piecemeal throughout the game. In short, the graphics lack a certain much-needed bit of spit and polish. One of our favourite gimmicks from Madness Returns are the weapons Alice wields as the game progresses. You haven't lived unless you fired a teapot cannon or indeed swung a hobby horse that can crush your enemies into a fine powder. The top spot, however, is reserved for the pepper grinder/Gatling gun, which you can use to spice your enemies into oblivion. Of course, the go-to Vorpal blade, named the Vorpal Sword in Carroll's poem Jabberwocky, is also handy in a pinch. Madness Returns is essentially a hack-and-slash platformer. There are puzzle sequences, but these feel largely out of place and tacked on as an afterthought. Bizarrely, there are also repeated sliding sections where the player controls Alice along a freefall as she collects teeth and avoids obstacles. These aren't challenging enough to feel rewarding and don't really feel fun or an organic part of the gameplay experience. Though the platforming and hacking is enjoyable at first, it quickly sours when the game fails to introduce new elements as time goes on, and essentially, every level ends up feeling like the last. Ultimately, Alice Madness Returns is a bit like that mysterious and beautiful girl that everyone fancied in high school. Fascinating and fantastic to look at from afar, but, dull and perplexing once you get up close. We can't fault the art design, but for a game, it's sadly lacking in solid gameplay. Take a long, hard stare in the looking glass, Alice.